turn the page, let me give you my tips for storytelling. My tips for storytelling. So the first one is paint a picture. The mind thinks in pictures. If I say to you, mother, you don't think M-O-T-H-E-R, you see your mother or a mother with a child. If I say to you house, you don't think H-O-U-S-E, but you see your house or dream house. Matter of fact, right now I'm going to say a word to you. And when I say this word, I do not want you to see this word. So right now, I don't want anyone seeing an elephant. Don't see the rope-like tail. Don't feel the wall-like hide. Don't smell the elephant smell. Don't see the hose-like trunk. Is there anybody not seeing an elephant? Okay, no, you can't achieve the reverse of an idea. Okay? Now, let me ask another question. How many of you have seen the Statue of Liberty or seen a picture of the Statue of Liberty? Show of hands. Okay, what's the Statue of Liberty holding up in one hand? Okay, now everybody said torch because of the picture I just gave you. You could have said tablets, but you said torch. Let me ask, anybody see an elephant running around the Statue of Liberty? No, I gave you a new picture. And as soon as you had that new picture, the old one went away. That's why God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, says the Lord of hosts. Well, if his ways aren't mine and my thoughts aren't his, whose needs to change? So paint a picture. Then show, don't tell. The more visual you can make things. And sometimes I fault people when they're writing stories because they describe everything. And I don't think we have to describe everything. I sat down at the table. The napkin was just to the left. On the napkin was a fork with gold filigree at the base. You don't need that much information about the silverware. But show, don't tell. Just as I did right now, the Statue of Liberty. The elephant, I couldn't bring an elephant in here, but I could describe that elephant and you visualized an elephant. Then use silence, the powerful pause. One of the things that I've discovered when asking a question is shut up. And a lot of times people will ask a question, and if people don't answer right away, they move on. Just be quiet. Because I'll tell you what, half of us have our brains freeze. You ask a question, my brain goes, ah! And about the time it thaws, you move on. This is for those of you that are a little older. We have Horshack in our audience. For those that ever watch Welcome Back, Kotter, we barely said, are there any questions? And Horshack's in the back room going, ooh, ooh, ooh. And everybody else is, oh, not him again. You know, and it's like anybody but him. And some people ask questions not because they have a question, but because they want to hear themselves talk. Or they want to start an argument. But don't be afraid of that pause and letting people think. Then, next, write your stories out. So even if you're going to verbalize it, give yourself some keywords, some notes, etc. And I've heard people say, well, you know, I don't really need to do that. You know, I like it to be fresh. It's different every time. Well, but if your story is important, it's important enough to write out so that you know that you've got the key details. You know that you've got the key details. And then next, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. And I've got a friend of mine, Kathy Dempsey, that has something to say about that, so watch the screen.
The next is rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. practice with everybody you can. Practice with your husband. Practice with your kids. Practice with in the teacher's lounge. But try stuff out. And let me just tell you, I didn't realize, but every time I would meet Bob, Pike in California or Minneapolis or Atlanta, he's like, yeah, let's go to dinner, and I go to dinner, and I didn't realize it for a couple of years, but he was practicing all this stuff out. See his reaction, see what questions I had, because then I'd see like the next day he'd be up there telling it. So practice your stuff, rehearse it.
Okay. Then the next one is use vocal variety. Nobody likes someone that says, I had a very exciting thing happen to me the other day. It's so exciting, I can hardly stand it. You won't believe it when you hear it. Use vocal variety. I had something very sad happen the other day. I got a call from my brother. And he said, you'll never guess where I am. And I said, you're on the golf course, because that'd be a safe answer about 98% of the time. He said, no, I'm in the hospital. He said, the first thing they're telling me is that my heart is failing. And he's already had 11 heart attacks. And his surgeon the last time said there's nothing left to work with. So your next heart attack is your last. And the reason I'm telling all of you is I need a ton of people to pray. He accepted Christ when he was 13, but I don't think he's walked with Christ since he was about 15. And I've talked to him, but it's amazing how little brothers don't listen to big brothers. And I'm just praying that there'll be somebody in the hospital that reaches out to him so that I know that he knows the Lord. So use vocal variety, loud, soft, okay? Next, use body language and motions. Now, usually I don't speak seated, but I've had this hip replaced twice. I've got bone cancer in this leg, and so I have to manage my energy. But otherwise, there would be a lot more motion, and I'd have to really pay attention. I was warned, if you decide to walk, don't walk past the edge of that carpet because the lighting ends there. But use body language. Now, for those of you, how many of you get nervous speaking in front of a group? Okay. Now, by the way, 3 greatest fears of Americans. Number 1, death by fire. And I can understand that. I mean, just think about what that would be like. Number 2, death by drowning. Followed by 3, fear of speaking in front of a group. Followed by 2 other forms of death, which means that there are at least 2 ways to die that are preferable to speaking in front of a group. But the number 1 thing people tell me in presentation skills is what makes me nervous is I don't know what to do with my hands. Now, simple. Hold something in one hand. See, what we can't do is we go, oh, and then we do this, we do this. We can't figure out what to do with 2 hands. Hold something in one hand, now all you have to do is figure out what to do with that one. And if you don't know what to do with that one, instead of using a headset, use a microphone. And you've now eliminated the thing that makes people the most nervous. And the other thing I can tell you is, I'll take a line from Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life. First sentence is, it's not about you. The reason most people get nervous is they think that their presentation is about them. It's not. The only reason I see for any of us presenting is to empower, inspire, and equip the people that we're sharing with. So it's about being you-centered, not me-centered. My job is to empower, inspire, and equip. So my focus needs to be on you, not on what you think of me. Is my breath fresh? Is my tie straight? I don't have a tie. Don't have to worry about that. Okay, so use body language and motions. And notice when you're holding something in your hand, the motions become natural. You don't even have to be Italian, and you'll find yourself making very natural motions. Okay, then consider becoming a character. Now, this is an advanced one. So most of you should not consider becoming a character yet. But it might, it might work. And there are some people that have the gift of being able to pick up accents. And then it's great to just be able to use a different accent. Why? Because the vocal variety, that's why a lot of times I team teach, because just when people hear two different voices, it makes a difference. Then take the audience on an emotional roller coaster. One of the best speeches I ever gave was when I was the second best speaker. I was invited, I was probably in my mid-20s, to be the keynote speaker for the Denver Sales and Marketing Execs annual banquet, about 600 people. I was living in Denver at the time, so here's a chance to be in front of my target audience. And in between accepting the engagement and delivering the speech, I moved to Minneapolis. And about 3 weeks before I was supposed to go back, I got a call from the guy that had hired me, and he said, Bob, we got a little problem. Now, don't worry about it, but we got a little problem. My co-chair also hired a speaker. Now, we still want you to speak, but we wonder if instead of speaking for an hour, you could speak for like 35 minutes. The other speaker could speak for 35 minutes, and then, it'll be fine. And I said, who's the other speaker? And he said, well, it's Dr. Buddy Bonner. Now, Dr. Buddy Bonner was in his late 50s. After World War II, he had served, and then he had gotten a GED, and then he had ended up with a doctorate. He ended up owning the Dale Carnegie franchise for Colorado. That year, he had won the Dale Carnegie International Speaking Contest, so out of all the Carnegie speakers in the world, he was number one. Okay, now I'm 28, and I'm 28. And I said, I would love to speak on the same platform as Dr. Bonner as long as I go first. And so I did, and I did really well. When I finished, got a very nice round of applause. And then Buddy got up, and he took us on an emotional road. He lifted us up. He slammed us down. He had us laughing. He had us crying. When he finished, there was like a standing ovation. And there were like 60 of the 600 people were clustered around him like, oh, if I could just touch the hem of your garment. And then one person walked across the room and shook my hand and said, Dr. Bonner was fabulous. But he said, I wanted to come and say thank you. I thought you were here to benefit me. Then he turned around, walked away. I actually don't even remember whether it was a man or woman. And I thought, if no one ever said anything after any speech, training, or sermon that I do, but thank you, I thought you were here to benefit me. And isn't that what Paul said to the Corinthians? You are epistles written not in tablets of stone, but in the fleshy tablets of the heart. Then use vivid words. And if you don't know how, we have an editor in the room that can help you. But use vivid words. And these help people wake up. So, for example, storm is not very vivid. But crashing thunder, lightning, and rain, same thing, storm. But suddenly we've got a picture. Okay, so use vivid words. Now, don't forget eye contact. Now, too often, what people do is they give us what's, but they don't give us how's. So you go out of here and you go, okay, Bob said I need to give eye contact. So when I teach tomorrow morning, I'm going to give eye contact. I'm going to make sure that I give eye contact. I'm going to give eye contact. You're going to know I'm looking at you. I'm giving you eye contact. Am I giving you eye contact, Rich? You think so? Okay, maybe I should use somebody without glasses.
You're doing good.
Okay, too much?
Little much.
Okay. All right. See, because here's what happens. Either people focus on one person because that's what they've been told. Find a friendly face in the audience and you just focus on them. Or there are cameras in the grocery store. You've had your eye contact, you've had yours, you've had yours, I'll be back, you've had yours, okay, don't worry, I'll be back. Okay, we're all really okay. All right, good. Now we're going back. Everybody's got their eye contact. Okay, well, that doesn't feel like eye contact. So let me give you 3 specific tips for eye contact. Number 1, look at one eye only. So if you're looking at 2 eyes, you're looking at the bridge of the nose. So if you look at either the left eye or the right eye, left eye or right eye, you give more intensity to your eye contact. So number 1, one eye only. Number 2, 3 to 5 seconds duration. Longer than that, and it becomes uncomfortable. Shorter than that, people aren't quite sure you've connected. Okay, and then the last is random. Random. Okay, you're not a camera in a grocery store. Okay. Then, stories make for a powerful opener or closer. And the interesting thing is people remember beginnings and endings. So what do you want them to remember? And probably the most powerful example of that, and I would challenge each of you, go on YouTube and listen to Paul Harvey's The Rest of the Story. He has a lot of them recorded, but he was a master. He would begin his 3-minute thing with a quick little story. It wasn't more than about 30 to 45 seconds. Then he'd give you about a minute and a half of other stuff, and then at the end he'd say, oh, remember when I talked about so-and-so? Like, yeah, a minute and a half ago. And he would say something that doubled the impact of his first statement. People remember openers and closers, so we want to say something that has impact. So for example, some of you know Rich Hendricks, and when he was over at Sun Valley Christmas Eve service one year, he started by saying, you know, this week I've been reading Luke, and I don't know how many times people have read Luke as the Christmas story. And he said, about 2/3 of you are here because you want to be, and the third are here because you're here with your family and you got to be here. But this week I've been reading Luke, and I've found myself asking, what's amazing about the Christmas story? And he said, as I've studied this week, I came up with 17 things that are amazing about the Christmas story. So take the Pew Bible right now, get about 4 of you and take turns, take 10 minutes, read Luke 2 out loud to one another, and ask yourself, what's amazing about the Christmas story? And then there were like 800 people reading all at once for about 10 minutes. And then he said, okay, what's amazing? And people would hold up a hand and they would shout out their answers. And he got about 27 things that were amazing. Well, then he took 4 of those that he'd already prepared, and that became a 10-minute sermon. Well, I'll tell you what, 15 years later, people still remember that sermon. And part of it was that he engaged them in the story. So that's another thing, is sometimes, even though the story may be about you, you can put your audience in the story. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're 24 years old. For some of you, that's going to be easy. For the rest of you, imagine it anyway. And you've worked really hard in the company that you're with. Matter of fact, you've had 9 promotions in 2 years. And this Friday, it was announced that you're now Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing. And over the weekend, you moved into your new office. The corner office is 10 by 20, has 2 banks of floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the mountains. And you arrange your furniture, everything. So now, you have your first staff meeting, and the 8 managers that are going to be at this meeting, you have worked for in the last 4 years, and you're now their boss. So staff meeting's at 9, you're there at 8, you've got everything set up, you start the meeting, and you're creating visions. You're aiming for the moon, you're reaching for the stars, and everybody's engaged, and then the president walks in. Oh, and by the way, you're wearing nice red golf slacks and a blue blazer. And if you're a woman, you're wearing a bright red skirt and a blue blazer. And the president looks at you like this. And then he says, you get up, you get out of here, you go home, you do not come back until you are dressed like a professional. And you slowly get up from your seat, walk down the corridor. Now you're sitting in your car, you look up, you can see the president looking down at you, 30 seconds at your table. How do you feel? 30 seconds at your table, how do you feel? Uplifted, encouraged, excited. Okay, how many of you are upset, angry, hurt, betrayed? Okay. Now, the president might have been right. Maybe that's not the way we should dress. But how he did it was wrong. When I was 24 years old, I was promoted to Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing. And I set up my office that weekend, and I did that meeting, and I had him say that to me, and I did not know how I was ever going to go back and face my managers. I learned more that day about how I would treat people that worked with me than all of the positive role models I'd ever had, because I said, I will never do that to anyone. So 2 days later, I had gotten a new suit. I Came back, and instead of coming in the office at 8, I was in the office at 6 because I wanted to get into the building without anyone seeing me. And before we'd have the meeting at 9 o'clock, all 8 of my managers came to me and said, you've got my support. What he did was just absolutely wrong. What he did was absolutely wrong. But it took having the courage to go back and to say, you know, all too often the conflict we cause in life is not over what we do, it is how we do it. It's not what we do, it's how we do it. Okay, then okay, add humor. Now, not jokes. Okay, I don't believe in telling jokes because jokes most often are at somebody's expense. The only one you can really tell a joke on is yourself. And even that's not very good. But I believe in using natural humor. So, for example, this morning when I said point a finger in the air, when I count 3, point to the person you want to lead, there was laughter. I've done seminars for 80 accountants. And I say, point a finger in the air. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have a leader. What's next? Not a smirk, not a snicker. Doesn't matter because my goal was to get a leader, not to get a laugh. If there's laughter, it's just a bonus. Okay, so I believe in using natural humor. And that's another reason why we say practice, 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 rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Because there are things that you don't think are funny, but as you tell it to other people, they snicker. If they snicker, you work on that piece. Okay, so add humor, and then finally, make it universal. Me too. And again, that's where it really helps if we put other people in the picture. When we put other people in the picture.